Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going on kind of an epic evolutionary road trip. We're talking more than 500 million years.
It's a huge timeline, and our mission really is to track the step-by-step origin story of vertebrates.
Right. We want to pinpoint those game-changing moments, those key innovations that took us from a simple sort of worm-like creature to, well, sharks, eagles, and us.
And the starting point is so humble. Paleontologists have fossils from about 530 million years ago, a creature like Mylacomygia.
And it wasn't some armored Cambrian giant.
Not at all. It was small, slender, no armor, no big claws, but it had the blueprint. It was the precursor to this incredibly successful vertebrate lineage.
So we're basically building a spine piece by piece through time. We have to look at the derived characters, the big leaps.
Mm-hmm. From the notochord to a skull, then jaws, then limbs.
The amniotic egg, hair, and then finally things like bipedalism. So let's start at the very beginning. What exactly is a chordate?
Okay, so phylum Chordata. It's the club that we belong to. And what defines a chordate are four specific anatomical features that all of us have, at least as embryos.
Okay, let's list them. Make them stick. What's number one?
The foundation is the notochord. It's a long, flexible rod.
Running down the back.
Right, providing skeletal support. It's the original internal skeleton. In us, it's mostly gone, but we still have bits of it left in the discs between our vertebrae.
Okay, so that's the base. What's next?
Right above it, you find the dorsal hollow nerve cord. This is a big deal. Most other animals have solid nerve cords, and they're usually on their belly side.
And this hollow tube becomes our brain and spinal cord,
Exactly, the entire central nervous system. Then number three, you've got the pharyngeal slits or clefts.
which are grooves behind the mouth.
Yeah. In early chordates, they were for filter feeding. In fish, they become gills. And in us, they get repurposed into parts of our ear, our head, and our neck.
Huh. Okay, and the last one.
The muscular post-anal tail. It's a tail that extends past the anus. For anything living in water, it's, the engine for propulsion.
So to see what that original blueprint looked like, we can look at some living relatives, right? Like lancelets?
Yes, the lancelets are perfect. They're like the blueprint brought to life. They keep all four of those chordate features, even as adults.
And there's something special about their nervous system, I remember. A clue about our own brains.
A huge clue. The very simple tip of their nerve cord expresses the exact same Hox genes that, in us, organize our really complex forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain.
So our brain is just a massively scaled up version of that simple structure.
It's an elaboration on an ancient pattern, yes. But then you get the total opposite with tunicates or sea squirts.
Right. They're actually our closest invertebrate relatives, but the adult just looks like a blob.
And that's the lesson. Evolution isn't always about adding complexity. The larva, the tunicate larva, has the notochord and tail. It swims around.
But then it settles down.
And it undergoes this radical metamorphosis. It basically eats its own tail and most of its nervous system to become a simple, sessile filter feeder. It even has fewer Hox genes throughout the instructions.
So now the stage is set for the actual vertebrates. The big difference is, what, more genes and a backbone.
That's it. A duplication of those Hox genes, which allows for a more complex body plan, and then the big structural innovation. A skeletal system, a skull and a vertebral column.
And the head changed everything. It let them become active predators.
Absolutely. The fossil record shows this happening gradually. You have things like Hycoella with a brain and eyes, but no real skull.
But our little Mylacomygia.
That's the one. It's considered the first to have a proper head, with capsules for its ears and eyes, a huge leap.
Okay, so who are the oldest living vertebrates today? The jawless ones, the cyclostomes?
Right, that's the hagfish and the lampreys. And the key thing here is, even without jaws, they're vertebrates because they have rudimentary vertebrae made of cartilage.
Hagfish are notorious.
They are. Their defense mechanism is just incredible. They can produce liters of suffocating slime in, under a minute.
It's an amazing party trick. And lampreys.
They're mostly parasitic. They have that rasping mouth they use to clamp onto fish. But what's really telling is that their larvae are suspension feeders that look almost exactly like lancelets.
It all connects back.
It always does.
Okay, time for what feels like the biggest leap yet. Jaws. This creates the Gnathostomes, the jawed vertebrates.
And this just turns the oceans into a whole new world. Jaws actually evolved from the skeletal rods that were supporting the gills.
So they repurposed existing parts.
A classic case of evolutionary tinkering. And suddenly you go from sucking and scraping to biting and grabbing. But they got other upgrades too. An enlarged forebrain for better smell and vision.
And the lateral line system, right? to feel vibrations in the water.
And paired fins with bony rays, so now they can steer, stop, and chase things down.
We see those extinct armored giants, the placoderms, in the fossil record. But who's around today?
Two main groups. First are the chondrichthyans.
The cartilage fish, sharks and rays.
Exactly. Their skeleton is mostly cartilage, which is actually a derived trait. Their ancestors had bone. They're just incredibly efficient, streamlined swimmers.
And they have to keep moving, right, to stay afloat.
Pretty much. They use a huge, oily liver for buoyancy, but that means most have to swim to generate lift. They also have really complex ways of reproducing internal fertilization, with some laying eggs and others giving live birth.
Okay, which brings us to the other, much bigger group, the Osteichthyes, the bony vertebrates.
This is basically all other fish, and eventually us. The key is that ossified endoskeleton, real bone.
And they solved a couple of problems the sharks didn't.
They did. They developed the operculum, that bony flap over the gills, so they can pump water without having to swim constantly. And critically, the swim bladder.
The internal flotation device. Now, I always assume that came first, but the sources say something really counterintuitive.
Yeah, this is a great example of evolution not being a straight line. The fossil evidence suggests that lungs actually appeared first.
Lungs. In fish.
Yes, in early bony fish living in shallow, swampy water. It helped them gulp air. Then, in the lineage that became the ray-finned fishes, those lungs were modified into the gas-filled swim bladder for buoyancy.
Wow. So lungs came before the swim bladder.
It seems so. And those ray-finned fishes are the vast majority of fish today. But for our story, the crucial branch is the lobe-fins.
Because their fins are different.
Very different. They have rod-shaped bones inside their fins, surrounded by muscle. You can see the beginnings of a leg.
And only 3 groups of these survive today.
Right. The coelacanths, the lungfishes, which, yes, still use lungs, and the one lineage that crawled out of the water.
The ultimate achievement, the move to land, about 365 million years ago. This gives us the tetrapods.
The four-footed. And it required major structural changes. Limbs with digits, for one. You need those to hold your weight up against gravity.
And a neck. Which seems simple, but it lets you move your head without turning your whole body.
Critical. And the pelvic girdle fused to the backbone, so you can actually transfer power from your hind legs to move forward.
The star of this transition is Tiktaalik, the fishapod.
Tiktaalik is incredible because it proves that the key features for walking evolved while the animal was still in the water.
It still had gills and scales.
But it had ribs to support its body, a mobile neck, and in its front fin, you see the pattern. 1 bone, then 2 bones, then a cluster of wrist bones.
The pattern for every arm and leg to come.
Exactly. It was propping itself up in the shallows long before it took a step on dry land.
And the most ancient living tetrapods today are the amphibians.
Frogs, salamanders, and they really show how tough that transition was. They're still kind of tied to the water.
We're sinners of moisture, you could say.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Their skin is so thin they need it for breathing, but it also dries out fast. And their eggs are shellless. They have to be laid in water.
Before we move on, the sources mentioned a quick, interesting point about the bid fungus that's wiping out amphibians.
Yes, the research on Cuban tree frogs. It showed that if a frog gets a non-lethal dose of the fungus and survives,
it builds up an immunity.
It does. It can fight off the pathogen better the next time. It's evidence of acquired immunity, which is, a hopeful sign.
So, the last barrier to a fully terrestrial life is reproduction, and that's solved by the amniotes.
The amniotes, that's reptiles, birds, and mammals. And the invention is the amniotic egg.
It's basically a private pond for the embryo.
That is the perfect description. It's a self-contained life support system. It has membranes for protection, food, waste, and gas exchange, all wrapped in a protective shell. You can now lay your eggs anywhere.
And they also got better at breathing, using the rib cage to ventilate the lungs.
Which let them have tougher, more waterproof skin. That brings us to the reptiles.
Keratin scales, internal fertilization. And most of them are ectothermic.
Right, they get their heat from the outside, they bask in the sun, it's very energy efficient. A crocodile doesn't need to eat nearly as often as a lion of the same size.
But the big exception within the reptiles, of course, are birds.
Who are technically just very, very modified dinosaurs.
Specialized for flight.
And those modifications are extreme. Honeycombed bones to save weight, no teeth, and they're endothermic. They generate their own body heat, which you absolutely need for the energy demands of flight.
And the origin of feathers is a classic case of exaptation. They weren't for flight at first.
Not at all. They evolved first in other dinosaurs, probably for insulation or for display, like courtship. Flight was a secondary use. You can see that in fossils like Archaeopteryx, which has wings and feathers, but still has teeth and a bony tail like a dinosaur.
Okay, that brings us to our final major group, the mammals. What are the two core innovations here?
It's all about the young. Mammary glands to produce milk, and hair for insulation to keep warm, because we're also endothermic.
Plus specialized teeth, efficient kidneys, and this amazing story about our jaw.
Oh, it's the best example of exaptation there is. In the early synapsids, our ancestors, the jaw joint was made of a couple of specific bones.
The quadrate and articular.
Right. And as the main jaw evolved and got stronger, those two little bones became redundant. They got smaller and smaller
And ended up moving into the middle ear.
and became the invicus and malleus, two of the three tiny bones that transmit sound and allow us to hear. Parts of an ancient jaw became parts of our modern ear.
That's just incredible. So we have three major branches of mammals today.
First, the monotremes,
Yeah.
platypuses and echidnas. They're unique because they still lay eggs.
No nipples either.
Correct. They just secrete milk onto their fur. Then you have the marsupials, kangaroos, opossums. They have a really short pregnancy.
And the baby finishes developing in a pouch.
Yes. And they show incredible convergent evolution. The marsupial mole in Australia looks and acts almost exactly like the placental mole you'd find elsewhere, just because they adapted to the same lifestyle.
And that last group is us, the eutherians or placental mammals.
Right. Defined by a long, complex pregnancy with that elaborate placenta feeding the young inside the uterus.
Which leads us finally to our own little branch, Homo sapiens. Our key traits are obvious. Bipedalism, big brains, language.
And it's still amazing that we share 99% of our genome with chimpanzees. The difference isn't so much in the genes themselves.
It's in the regulation, when the genes turn on and off.
Precisely. A small difference in the timing and expression of just a handful of regulatory genes can lead to these massive differences in anatomy and cognition.
And when we study the hominin fossils, we see something called evolutionary mosaicism. Can you unpack that?
It just means that different traits evolve at different rates. It's not a package deal. For us, the classic example is that bipedalism came way before the big brain.
Like with Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis.
Exactly. Lucy was walking upright 3.2 million years ago.
Yeah.
We have her skeleton. We have the Laetoli footprints. She was fully bipedal, but her brain was still about the size of a chimp's.
And even tool use came before the big brain expansion?
That's right. The earliest evidence for stone tools is around 2.5 million years ago, likely used by Australopiths, who still had relatively small brains.
So once our genus Homo emerges, things accelerate. We see Homo ergaster fully adapted for long-distance walking.
And interestingly, with less size difference between males and females, which might suggest a shift in social structure, maybe towards more pair bonding,
And the tree is so bushy, it's not a ladder. We had Neanderthals.
who were another highly successful, large-brained hominin. And we now know from their genomes that our ancestors interbred with both Neanderthals and another group, the Denisovans. Our history is one of merging branches.
All leading to Homo sapiens, originating in Africa and then expanding out, showing this new level of symbolic thought, like that 77,000-year-old art.
It's been a remarkable journey. We've gone from the simple four-part chordate plan to the skull and backbone, then the power of jaws, the freedom of limbs, the protection of the amniotic egg, and all the specializations of mammals and hominins.
And the most important takeaway for me is always that it's a branching tree, not a linear march of progress towards us. Ray-finned fishes are wildly successful. Their path is just as valid and enduring as ours.
So a final thought to leave you with. We saw that key traits like the wrist bones in Tiktaalik or the bipedal hips in early hominins evolved before they were strictly necessary for their later famous functions. They were pre-adaptations.
So what's the question?
The question is, what subtle, perhaps seemingly useless anatomical variations exist in the human population today that might be the pre-existing material for the next major evolutionary shift in our own species? Something to think about.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.